On the 15th of November 2018, I left Australia to undertake the most transformative journey of my entire life. As I said goodbye to my parents, the reality still hadn't struck me that I was unlikely to see them for at least 12 months. 14 and a bit hours later, I found myself in Abu Dhabi airport fighting through security in order to make my connecting flight to London Heathrow. Another 8 hours later and I had arrived in Heathrow Airport. It is strange how I knew immediately after I saw London for the first time that this is a place that is very close to my soul. My first few days in London was a whirlwind of experiencing all the fantastic cultural things that London has to offer. I was so excited to be in a foreign country, and the realities of solo travel as a young female hadn't really set in. In those first few days, I packed my schedule full of visits to museums and palaces, places that I'd only really experienced in the movies. It was amazing to see these historical and cultural artifacts, yet at the same time, I felt like I didn't really get to experience the vibrant culture of London. After a few days in London, I travelled to Manchester, where I met some amazing female friends who I travelled with around the city, and I got to experience a real northern Christmas, I suppose. From Manchester, I headed to York, where I just spent one night, but I got to experience a village feel for Christmas. My next stop was Edinburgh, where I met a man who I couldn't understand, but I got to experience this beautiful, misty city in all of its glory. It was fantastic to see the castles and the bagpipe players and experience a little bit of life in such an old place, which I'd never really had the experience of doing in Australia necessarily. Not featured in this film is what I would call my birthright trip to Carlacan in the Isle of Skye. It was an amazing bus trip that I took for a few days, and it was just a brilliant experience. I then returned to London at the height of the Christmas festivities, before taking the Eurostar to Paris.
I watch the leaves fall down.
I suppose my opinion on Paris might feel a little controversial. It's always hyped up as this beautiful, magical place in the movies full of love. That wasn't necessarily the Paris I experienced. While Paris was beautiful and amazing, it was also a bit disappointing. It was a bit dirty and a bit scary. And I suppose I'd built it up in my head as this wonderful place. So in a way, it was a bit of a letdown.
Lonely. Inside you hold me.
I was also in Paris in a time of significant civil unrest. But what I got to experience from this was a protest in a new country that I'd never been to before. I got to document some fantastic people and hear their stories, and I got to make some real Parisian friends. It's challenging to make a friend when you can't speak the same language, but when you're both in an environment like this, it suddenly becomes a little bit easier.
I'll count the days until they're numbered. But who said this haze would make me stronger? It must be.
My recollections of Italy are always challenging in a way, and marred with the fact that my experience as an au pair wasn't necessarily what I was expecting. But Italy was still a beautiful place, and I'm so grateful that I got to experience not just the cities of Italy, but life in Italy as well. I took a few days to experience Bern, Zurich and Zermatt at Christmas time and spend Christmas Day with my friend Taylor and her family. It was my first truly northern Christmas, and that was so exciting.
I'll try to forget it.
I also had the amazing experience of skiing in two more countries, the Zermatt Resort in Switzerland and Breuil Cervinia in Italy. After some challenging months in Italy, I left my position as an au pair and travelled to Rome in order to get a visa to move to London again and work in the hostel that I'd stayed in on my first night in the UK. To my amazement, during my first few months in the UK as a resident, I was able to invite my family to come and visit me. Together, we drove to the Isle of Skye in Scotland, where my father's family comes from, and it was amazing to be able to experience the sights and the sounds and the smells of the Isle of Skye again.
I know you love where you are, but I think I changed my mind.
I also had the fortune of meeting my partner while I lived in London. Together we travelled the UK to Bath, Cambridge, Oxford, Southampton, Brighton. As my time abroad was coming to a close, my partner took me to meet his family back in Spain. Together we travelled to Huelva, Seville, Mathagon, Granada, Cordoba, and many other small towns and cities along the way. It was a beautiful experience, and I'm so glad I got to experience his country and culture before the world shut down in early 2020.
Freddie, come back. I know you love her more, but I thought I had more time.
I didn't film most of our experience, as we were literally living in Spain. However, I did film this amazing trip to Granada and the Alhambra, which is a Muslim palace dating back hundreds of years. I'm so grateful that I was able to go and experience Europe before the world shut down. and this is just a little nostalgic recollection of my travels. I can't wait till one day when we're able to go back and visit our friends and family who continue to live in Europe. Stay strong, everyone, and I'll see you next time.